You don't need another plan. You don't need another motivational quote. You need silence, stillness, a moment where everything stops so you can hear the war inside your own head, because it's not the world that's been keeping you down, it's not other people, it's your own thoughts. The ones that tell you you're not ready, not good enough, not capable, the ones that sound like reason, but feel like fear. You've been living under the rule of a mind trained by survival, not freedom, and if you don't take it back now, it will keep lying to you, every single day, until you forget what real power feels like. Watch till the end, subscribe and like if this voice speaks to you, and let's rewrite your relationship with your own mind. You don't even notice when it starts. One day you simply feel tired, you don't speak up in a meeting, you tell yourself it's not the right time, you hesitate before sending the message, applying for the job, taking the step, you tell yourself it's wisdom, patience, logic, maturity. You don't realize the voice you're listening to is not your own, but a whisper disguised as truth. That whisper says, not yet. That whisper says, play it safe. That whisper says, be careful, you could lose everything. But here's the part that hurts. It feels like you. It sounds reasonable. It sounds protective. You believe it because it's quiet, subtle, familiar. You believe it because your mind has always been wired to protect you from pain. But now that wiring is protecting you from progress. You're not weak. You're not lazy. You're not broken. You've just been surviving for so long you started mistaking fear for intelligence. You started thinking that the part of you that plays small was being smart, that pulling back was self-respect, that holding your tongue was power. But all it really was fear dressed up as logic. And it doesn't yell. It doesn't fight you. It's the kind of fear that wraps its arm around your shoulder and tells you to wait a little longer. It convinces you that risk isn't worth it. It turns failure into shame. It turns effort into exhaustion. And before you know it, years have passed and you haven't moved. You want to know why? Because survival is not the same as freedom. Survival says, stay where it's safe. Don't disturb the balance. Don't stretch. Don't reach. Don't rise. But freedom says, feel the fear and go anyway. The lie is not that you're unworthy. The lie is that fear is the voice of reason. And when that lie rules you, you start designing your life around comfort zones instead of growth zones. You avoid love because it might hurt. You avoid leadership because you might fail. You avoid trying because someone might see you fall. But what you don't realize is falling forward is how you rise. And the only way to grow is to risk being seen before you fully become. Here's the truth most people never tell you. Your mind is not built to make you great. It's built to keep you alive. And to your mind, new dangerous, change threat, ambition a risk. So of course it whispers, of course it tells you to wait, to hold back, to stay small. It's not because you're not ready. It's because your mind is trying to protect you from imagined danger. But you're not in danger. You're in a cage. And the lock. It's not out there in the world. It's inside you. Once you see that, once you catch the lie mid-thought, once you question that whisper, once you lean into discomfort instead of avoiding it, that's the moment everything starts to change. Because when you stop mistaking fear for truth, you reclaim your authority, you begin choosing from strength, not survival. You begin acting from vision, not memory, and that's where freedom starts. Not in shouting back at your fears, but in calmly seeing them for what they are. Noise, just noise. So the next time your mind whispers, not yet, you whisper back, watch me. Because now you know, the whisper isn't truth. It's just the sound of your old self, fading. There's a voice in your head that talks even when you're silent. It comments when you look in the mirror. It speaks when you're alone with your thoughts. It judges, doubts, criticizes, warns. It tells you what's possible, what's too late, what's too much. And you listen. Because it sounds like you. It lives in your mind. It uses your fears. It echoes your past. So you assume it must be you. But what if it's not? What if the loudest voice in your head was never truly yours? What if it was your father's disappointment, your mother's anxiety, your teacher's expectations, society's standards, all stitched together into a script you didn't write but have been following all your life? You weren't born afraid to take up space. You weren't born doubting your ideas or second-guessing your feelings.
You learned that
Somewhere along the way, someone handed you a mirror and told you this is what you are, not based on who you truly were, but on their own fears, their own limits. And because you were too young to question it, you believed them. You wore their beliefs like a second skin. You carried their doubts like they were your own reflection. You made room in your head for their voices and slowly lost the sound of your own. Now every time you try to change, that voice rises up and warns you to stop. It says you're not ready. It says you're not enough. It says people will laugh or leave or look away. And you listen not because it makes sense, but because it's familiar. It sounds like the world you grew up in, the room you were raised in, the fear you were taught to call reality. If that voice always pulls you back instead of pushing you forward, why do you keep trusting it? If that voice always speaks in fear and never in vision, why do you treat it like truth? You've mistaken noise for guidance. You've confused survival thinking for self-awareness. But now, it's time to pull the wires apart. Because deep under all that noise, there's a quieter voice. One that doesn't panic. One that doesn't insult you. One that doesn't need to be loud because it already knows its worth. That voice is you. The real you. The one that was buried beneath layers of conditioning, shame, guilt, and expectations. And when you finally sit still and listen, not to the noise but to that steady, grounded voice, you'll feel something you haven't felt in years: clarity. You'll remember that your worth was never up for debate. You'll realize that your instincts aren't wrong. You'll understand that you're allowed to trust yourself, even if no one else ever did. This isn't about ignoring the voice in your head. It's about questioning where it came from. It's about recognizing which parts were inherited, and which parts were always yours. It's about reclaiming your inner world one thought at a time. Because once you stop letting someone else's voice live in your mind rent-free, you finally get to hear yourself again. And that's the beginning of becoming real. It's strange, isn't it? How you can hate the pain you're in yet still cling to it like a blanket you can't let go of. You wake up tired of the same patterns, the same disappointments, the same cycles that suffocate you. And yet when the chance comes to step into something new, something different, you hesitate, you freeze, you pull back. Because your mind doesn't just fear pain. It fears the unknown more. That's why you go back to the same arguments, the same habits, the same relationships, even when you swore you'd never return. It isn't because you're weak or broken. It's because your mind has learned to trust what it already knows, even if what it knows is slowly destroying you. Familiar pain feels safer than unfamiliar peace. Think about it, that anxiety you've carried for years. It's heavy, but it's predictable. You know how it feels, how it twists in your stomach, how it clouds your chest. That disappointment you keep reliving, it stings, but you know its rhythm, its script, its taste. Peace though. Peace is uncharted. It feels empty at first, unstable, almost too quiet. And in that quiet, your mind panics, searching for the chaos it has learned to call home. That's why healing feels so uncomfortable at the start. Not because peace isn't real, but because peace doesn't match the story your mind has rehearsed for years. And so you sabotage it. You run back to what hurts because at least what hurts feels familiar. But here's the truth you need to face. Your mind is lying to you. It whispers that safety is found in what you've always known. It convinces you that stepping into the unknown will destroy you. But what it doesn't tell you is that staying where you are already is destroying you. Every time you repeat an old pattern, every time you settle into pain you don't deserve, every time you choose the cage because the open field feels too wide, you're proving your mind right. You're feeding its addiction to familiarity. But the moment you dare to step forward, even trembling, even uncertain, you begin to rewire it. You show your mind that peace doesn't have to be foreign, that calm can feel as safe as chaos once did, that joy can become just as familiar as suffering has been. This won't happen in one step. It happens in 1,000 tiny choices. Choosing not to reply the same way in an argument. Choosing not to numb yourself with the same habits. Choosing not to crawl back to someone who only knows how to wound you. Each time you make that choice, no matter how small, you chip away at your mind's addiction. You start teaching it something new, that you are not here to survive in circles. You are here to live forward. And one day, the unfamiliar will no longer terrify you. Peace will no longer feel like emptiness. Healing will no longer feel like a threat. On that day you'll realize something powerful. The cage was never locked. It was only your mind convincing you that stepping out would kill you. But the truth is, staying in was killing you all along. There's a moment you know too well. You're right there on the edge of a breakthrough, the edge of action, and suddenly you stop. You tell yourself you'll do it later. You distract yourself with something meaningless. You stall, and then the opportunity slips away. It feels like weakness. It feels like laziness. But it isn't. It's wiring. Your brain was never built to make you extraordinary. It was built to keep you safe. Safe from danger. Safe from risk. Safe from anything uncertain. And so every time you step toward change, your mind starts screaming warnings. It whispers, "This is too much. This could hurt. Stay where you are." That's why you procrastinate. That's why you scroll. That's why you shrink right at the moment you're supposed to rise. It isn't because you're broken. It's because your brain is still running an ancient program designed for survival, not success. But here's the problem. Safety is not the same as living. Staying where you are keeps you breathing. Yes, but it also keeps you small. It locks you in cycles where your potential never sees daylight. And every time you obey that voice of hesitation, you strengthen it. You give it proof that fear was right. This is why self-sabotage feels so natural, because your biology is pulling you back while your spirit is begging you to step forward. You're caught in the tug-of-war between who you've been wired to be and who you're capable of becoming. The shift happens when you stop waiting for fear to disappear. It won't. Instead, you learn to move while it's screaming in your head. You act before the hesitation hardens into paralysis. You override the wiring not by fighting it, but by directing it. Think about it. Your brain doesn't actually care about the difference between fear and excitement. It reacts the same way: racing heart, quickened breath, tension in your chest. The only difference is what you decide to attach those signals to. You can tell yourself, "This is danger," and retreat. Or you can tell yourself, "This is energy," and step forward. This is the work, teaching your brain that discomfort is not death. That the shaking hands, the pounding chest, the restless nights before a leap, those are not signs to retreat. They're proof that you are stepping into territory that matters. Every time you act in spite of it, you rewire the circuit. You start building a new pattern where fear doesn't mean stop, it means go. Where resistance doesn't signal weakness, it signals growth. And slowly, the moments you used to sabotage will become the moments you rise. The hesitation will still be there, but it will no longer own you. Because here's the truth. You are not your wiring. You are the one who decides whether to obey it. And when you choose not to, when you choose to step forward anyway, you break the ancient program that has been running your life. You stop living like a prisoner of survival and start living like a creator of destiny. Your biology may have written the script, but you are the one holding the pen. You've been living most of your life under quiet command, not from the world outside, but from the voice inside your head. It tells you when to stop. It tells you when to delay. It tells you not today, maybe tomorrow. And you've listened. You've obeyed, without even realizing it. You've let your mind take the role of master, while you, the real you, have been reduced to a passenger. And here's the truth that stings. Your mind doesn't care about your dreams. It doesn't care about growth. It only cares about comfort, safety, familiar ground. So every time you've tried to rise, it's pulled you back into the cage of habit, convincing you that hesitation was wisdom and avoidance was protection. But the moment you decide to reverse the roles, everything changes. Your mind is not meant to be the master. It is meant to be the servant, a tool, an instrument that carries out the orders of your spirit, not one that dictates them. And training it requires more than positive thinking or empty promises to yourself. It requires structure, ritual, discipline. Think about it. When you wake up in the morning and your body screams to stay in bed, who wins? When your goals demand focus but your hand reaches for the distraction of a screen, who is in control? Every one of those moments is a test, not of strength, but of authority. Are you the one giving orders or the one following them? The shift begins the day you stop waiting to feel like it, because your mind will rarely feel like it. It will resist. It will bargain. It will whisper excuses so convincing they sound like truth. But when you commit to action regardless of feeling, you begin the training. Every time you follow through, even when your mind resists, you teach it who's in charge. Rituals are your weapons here. Not glamorous habits, but deliberate patterns that anchor your day. Waking up, and moving before your brain has the chance to argue, setting up environments where temptation is removed, where the path of least resistance leads toward progress instead of distraction, because willpower fades, but structure sustains. You've been living with the illusion that freedom means doing whatever you want, whenever you want. But freedom without discipline is slavery to impulse. Real freedom is when you can direct your thoughts like soldiers, not let them wander like rebels. And yes, it will be uncomfortable at first, because your mind has been in power for years, maybe decades. It will fight back. It will scream louder than ever, try to pull you back into the familiar. But every day you choose discipline, you weaken its grip. Every day you choose structure, you sharpen your authority. There will come a point when the very things that once felt impossible will feel automatic, not because they became easier, but because you trained your mind to obey. You'll wake up before dawn without an inner war. You'll act on what matters before distraction even has a chance to whisper. You'll feel the difference between being dragged through life and driving it. This is what separates those who only dream from those who build. Not talent, not luck, not even motivation, but the ability to command the mind and have it listen. And here's the realization that changes everything. Your mind isn't against you, it only needs direction. It craves order, repetition, clarity. When you take the driver's seat and give it those things, it stops sabotaging you and starts serving you. You've obeyed long enough. You've let hesitation, fear, and comfort dictate the shape of your life. Now it's your turn. Train your mind to obey, and it will. Because the mind is powerful, yes, but only when it knows who the master is. The world won't stop for you. It will spin faster, scream louder, demand more. Noise will chase you from the moment you open your eyes. Deadlines, notifications, conversations that leave you drained. You're taught to keep up, to move quicker, to never pause, because pausing feels like falling behind. But here's the part no one tells you. The faster you move, the more you forget who's moving. You get lost in momentum, you start running without direction, and when life becomes nothing but noise, you lose the one thing you cannot afford to lose: your center. Stillness is not weakness. Stillness is not quitting. Stillness is power. It is the moment you choose to stop reacting and start seeing. It's when you close your eyes, slow your breath, and realize the chaos outside doesn't have to become chaos inside. Stillness is not about sitting still. It's about standing firm. It's about reclaiming your ground while the world tries to drag you in 1,000 directions. Think about how often you've made decisions in panic, said words in anger, or moved just because you felt pressured to, and later, you saw it clearly. You weren't acting from wisdom, you were acting from noise. That's what stillness saves you from. It gives you space to separate truth from impulse. When you practice stillness, you create distance between yourself and the storm. You learn to hear the difference between the voice of fear and the voice of clarity. You realize that silence is not empty. It's full of direction, full of perspective, full of answers you couldn't hear while you were drowning in distraction. And here's the truth: stillness is a weapon. Because when others panic, you stay calm. When others rush, you wait and watch. When others are consumed by the noise, you're guided by clarity. That calm presence is untouchable. It unnerves people who expect you to crack, who expect you to match their chaos. Stillness gives you the advantage. Not because life gets easier, but because you stop giving your energy to the noise that doesn't matter. You begin to see through the surface, straight into the core of what does. It will feel unnatural at first. Your mind will resist, beg to be busy, crave distraction. It will say, do something, check something, fix something. But stillness teaches you that not every urge needs your action. Not every thought needs your attention. Not every battle deserves your fight. And as you practice, something inside you changes. You begin to feel anchored, even in the middle of chaos. You breathe deeper, you listen better, you move with intention, not impulse. The noise is still there, but it no longer owns you. This is the hidden intelligence of stillness. It recalibrates you. It strips away the false urgency, the borrowed fears, the endless pressure to rush. It takes you back to your core, where your real strength lives. So the next time the world demands you to hurry, to panic, to react, pause. Take one breath longer than you think you can afford. Step back into the stillness you've been running from. Because in that stillness, you'll find something rare. Not silence, not emptiness, but clarity, the kind that makes you unstoppable. It always begins the same way. The thought returns, the urge returns, the pattern you swore you'd escape shows up again, knocking on your mind like an old enemy who knows exactly where you live. It feels familiar, almost comforting in its predictability, and before you know it, you're standing at the same crossroads you've been at 100 times before, caught between what you've always done and what you've always wanted. This is the cruel rhythm of cycles. They don't just haunt you once. They repeat. They test you. They wait for the moment when you're tired, when you're vulnerable, when your guard is down, and too often you've given in. Too often you've collapsed back into the same reaction, the same self-sabotage, the same story that keeps you trapped. But then, one day something shifts. Not because the cycle disappears, but because you finally see it for what it is. You pause, you catch the thought mid-sentence, you feel the pull, but this time, you don't move. This time, you stand still long enough to hear yourself say, "No, not again." That moment is small on the surface, it doesn't look dramatic. No one applauds, no one even notices. But inside you, it is seismic. It is the beginning of an entirely different life. Because the moment you choose differently, you've proven something your old self never believed. You are not your patterns. You are not your urges. You are not your past. That single pause is power. It is you breaking a chain that has been invisible but heavy on your shoulders for years. It is you telling your brain, your habits, your fears that you are no longer a passenger, that from this moment on you are the one driving. And here's what makes that moment so rare. It won't feel triumphant. It will feel uncomfortable. Empty. Almost wrong. Because your mind craves the familiar, even if the familiar has been destroying you. But if you can sit in that discomfort, if you can breathe through that tension instead of running back to what's easy, you will taste freedom for the first time. This is the turning point most people miss. They think change comes in grand gestures, overnight transformations, dramatic reinventions, but real change is quieter. It happens in a single second where you finally refuse to play the same script. That's when your life begins to split into two paths, the one you've always walked, and the one you've been too afraid to step onto. This cycle will return again tomorrow, and the day after, and maybe for years, but now you've proven you can stop it. You've proven that choice exists, and every time you choose differently, even in the smallest way, you weaken the grip of the past, you carve out a new direction. So when the old thoughts rise again, and they will, don't look at them as failure. Look at them as the reminder that you're being given another chance to prove your freedom. Because the day you choose differently once, you realize you can choose differently always. That moment is not the end of the cycle. It is the beginning of you. Your thoughts arrive uninvited. They don't ask permission, they don't knock. They storm in. 1,000 voices layered on top of each other, each one trying to convince you it is the truth. Some whisper fears, some replay old wounds, some shout your doubts so loudly that you can't hear anything else. And because you've lived with them for so long, you've mistaken those voices for who you are. But here's the truth. You are not the noise in your head. You are the one listening. You've lived as if every passing voice was law, as if your mind's chaos was your identity. But what if it's not? What if you could step back and watch those thoughts the way you watch clouds pass in the sky? Freedom doesn't come from wrestling your thoughts into silence. It comes from learning how to witness them without being controlled by them. When you step into that role, the watcher, you begin to realize just how much of your suffering came not from reality, but from the stories your mind created about reality. Think about it. How many times have you lived an entire day inside a thought that wasn't even true? How many sleepless nights have you wasted replaying scenarios that never happened? That is the trap of unconscious living, mistaking the chatter of your mind for the voice of your soul. But the moment you begin to observe, everything changes. Suddenly, when the thought comes, "I can't do this," you don't collapse. You notice it. You name it. You see it for what it is. Just a thought, not a prophecy, not a command, not a definition of who you are, just a thought passing through the space of your awareness. That space is power. That pause between the thought and your reaction is where your freedom lives. The wider that space becomes, the less enslaved you are. You stop living like a puppet, pulled by strings of fear and doubt. You start living as the one holding the strings. This doesn't mean the mind goes quiet. It doesn't mean fear vanishes or doubt disappears. It means you've learned how to stay anchored even when the storm rages inside you. You watch the storm without becoming it. You allow the voices to rise and fall, knowing they are nothing more than ripples on the surface of something much deeper, much steadier, your true self. And when you live from that place, your decisions change, your energy changes. You no longer act out of panic or impulse. You act out of clarity. You no longer mistake noise for guidance. You wait for the calm beneath the noise. That is emotional mastery, not control, but awareness, not suppression, but freedom. So the next time your mind begins its familiar chaos, don't fight it, don't obey it, watch it, breathe, and remember, you are not the voice in your head, you are the one who hears it. And the one who hears it, the watcher, that is where your real strength begins. From the moment you wake up, your mind begins pulling you in different directions. One thought pushes you toward distraction, another toward fear, another toward hesitation. And before the day even begins, you feel like you're already behind, chasing instead of leading, reacting instead of choosing. That's because the mind you live with today wasn't built with intention. It was shaped by years of repetition, by the voices you listened to, by the patterns you never questioned. You weren't born with discipline. You inherited noise, and that noise has been deciding too much of your life. But here's the truth, your mind doesn't have to be a battlefield forever. You can shape it, you can teach it, you can make it serve you instead of sabotage you. It begins with awareness, noticing when your thoughts drift to doubt, when they whisper excuses, when they replay old fears, and in that noticing you choose differently. Not once, not twice, but every day. Because the mind learns by repetition just like the body does. Every time you redirect your focus, every time you pause before reacting, every time you refuse to let fear dictate your choice, you are building new wiring. You are teaching your mind who the master really is. It's not about perfection. You won't always win. Sometimes the old thoughts will pull you back. Sometimes you'll obey the voice of weakness. But that doesn't erase the work. What matters is persistence. Discipline is not built in a single decision. It is built in thousands of small ones. It's the act of standing up one more time than you fall. And slowly, something shifts. The same mind that used to trap you in cycles begins to support you. The thoughts that once pushed you down begin to fuel you forward. You no longer live at the mercy of impulses. You live guided by intention. You stop waiting for motivation and start acting from principle. This is what it means to build a mind that serves you. To transform the very thing that once held you hostage into the engine that carries you forward. A disciplined mind doesn't silence fear. It just refuses to obey it. It doesn't erase doubt. It just doesn't bow to it. It takes all the chaos, all the noise, all the resistance, and turns it into fuel for movement. And when that shift happens, your life changes. Because suddenly, you're no longer reacting to circumstances, you're creating them. You're no longer dragged by the weight of your past. You're building from the strength of your future. Your mind is the soil. Every thought you choose to nurture grows into something that shapes your reality. You can fill it with weeds and wonder why you're stuck, or you can plant discipline, focus, and clarity, and watch yourself become untouchable. Remember this, you are not born with the mind you need. You build it, thought by thought, choice by choice, day by day. And the moment you commit to that work, your mind is no longer your enemy. It becomes your greatest ally. And with an ally like that, there is nothing in this world that can stop you.